A car speeds through a dense forest. In the trunk, a boy is tied up, thinking sarcastically how beautiful life truly is. He reaches into his pocket and manages to pull out a pocket knife. Opening it, he starts cutting the ropes. This kind of situation isn't entirely new to him. In a past life, he was the Demon King, collecting the skulls of those who perpetuated evil in society. That was, of course, until he was betrayed and killed, a blade piercing his chest. Ironically, the Demon King didn't pass on to the afterlife. Instead, he was reincarnated as a newborn and led a completely normal life. He dealt with noisy neighbors by banging on the ceiling. He faced the same struggles as any ordinary citizen. He served in the military. He even started a successful business. Of course, he no longer had the powers he wielded in his previous life. But that didn't mean he couldn't handle a situation like this. Suddenly, the trunk pops open. Grabbing a fire extinguisher, he smashes it into the face of one of his captors. Before they can even process what's happening, he's already struck the blonde one in the ribs. Licking the blade of his knife, he asks, "Who's next?" But then he freezes, startled. A blonde girl is recording everything with her phone. Why is there a teenage girl here? He wonders. Her hands shaking, she drops the phone. That's when he realizes all of them are just kids. He steps out of the trunk slowly. The girl, panicking, screams that it was all just a prank. But now, he's killed them all. Confused, he asks what she means by prank. What kind of idiot calls this a prank? Suddenly, a gunshot echoes through the forest. Blood seeps from his abdomen. A black-haired girl had snuck up on him. Staring at her in disbelief, he asks, "Did you really just do that?" Trembling, she drops the gun and runs away, screaming. Spitting blood, he picks up the weapon and realizes he only has about 30 minutes left. He can't leave these kids in the middle of the forest, he needs to make it look like self-defense. The blonde boy groans, saying he's in pain and needs a hospital. He threatens the protagonist, claiming his father will kill him. But the man stomps on him, ordering him to shut up. They need to leave quickly. The driver's skills are horrendous. Inside the car, everyone struggles to stay upright. Nearly passing out, the protagonist can't help but think the woman behind the wheel is impressively bad at this. She doesn't even fit the stereotype. Closing his eyes, he resigns himself to fate, hoping he wakes up in a hospital. When he regains consciousness, he wonders if there's a doctor nearby. But he's not in a hospital. He's lying on a stone altar, about to be dissected as part of a cult ritual. Around him, the cultists chant, praying for a being named Lucius to accept the sacrifice. For the love of God, he thinks in shock. Everyone who's ever crossed paths with the Demon King knows one thing: he has an aversion to being stabbed. The protagonist, now chained and desperate, is about to be impaled when an explosion rocks the chamber. Both he and the cultist stare in disbelief as cracks spread through the room. He smells it immediately, the presence of heroes. 5 of them step through the breach, advancing in perfect formation. One of them smiles. Approaching the cultists eagerly, they unleash chaos. It's a one-sided slaughter. The heroes cut, smash, and obliterate their enemies with magic and blades, leaving no chance for survival. As the protagonist lies there in confusion, the heroes discuss amongst themselves, mocking the cultists. They wonder if this was the infamous Dark Pact, dismissing the cultists as nothing more than cattle. Watching their artistic attire and pretentious speeches, the Demon King silently prays he isn't back in his old world. The heroes approach the altar. The group's healer notices the boy still alive and expresses pity. The protagonist feels a glimmer of hope as he locks eyes with the swordsman, expecting to be rescued. But the swordsman's expression is anything but kind. Unsheathing his sword, the hero steps forward, his intent unmistakable. The Demon King hates being stabbed. But immobilized, there's nothing he can do. Now you understand why we despise being pierced, he thinks. The hero raises his sword, preparing to strike. These unpleasant situations happen too often, he muses bitterly. Before the blade comes down, he questions his fate. Am I really going to die again? At 25, no less? Strangely, he wonders if this time, it'll truly be the end. He remembers his infancy, the days spent in daycare, the years at school, and the moment he enlisted in the army. He's had enough of this cycle of death and resurrection and mutters bitterly, "This is absolute crap." The swordsman hero, confused by the outburst, halts his attack. Annoyed, the protagonist tells him to shove his sword into his own black hole. Eyes wide, the swordsman is taken aback. The entire group falls silent, awkwardness hanging thick in the air. After a moment, the knight snaps out of it, declaring that the protagonist talks too much and deserves to die for it. Just as the blade is about to fall, the priestess steps forward and stops him. "Didn't you hear what the boy just yelled?" she demands. The knight hesitates, confused. She explains that it's clear the boy didn't join this cult willingly. She points to the markings on the floor, identical to the ones they saw when they themselves were summoned. The heroes begin debating among themselves. After examining the situation, they conclude that someone had summoned a hero as a vessel for the demon lord. The protagonist, lying chained and exhausted, listens in disbelief. A hero? Him? That's absurd. He's the demon lord. Then again, he thinks, heroes are arrogant, narcissistic, shameless psychopaths, much like the demon lord himself. Resigned, he accepts his supposed destiny as a hero. The other heroes overhear his mutterings and shoot him looks of disapproval, but he doesn't care. The brunette heroine requests a status check on the boy. The protagonist, unfamiliar with this status system, is shown his stats for the first time. The group gathers around to inspect them. He's at level 1, with a progress acceleration ability granted by his hero status. However, there's a peculiar note, a stage 1 fractional corruption. The blonde heroine smugly points out that she was right about him. The long-haired swordsman confirms her observation with disdain. But the protagonist sees something different in his status, something only visible to him, the details of the corruption. It grants a +3 bonus to all stats, +5 resistance to darkness, and a level 1 absorption ability with a 10% absorption coefficient. This lets him recover mana from external sources. What's with all this text? What the hell is this, he thinks, overwhelmed. The group decides to let him live, noting the peculiarities in his stats. Freed from his chains, the protagonist ponders what the gods could possibly want from him. The swordsman looks at him with disapproval, and the protagonist sarcastically declares he's ready for his next life. His carefree demeanor draws judgmental stares from the group, especially since he's standing there completely naked. With a cheerful grin, he thanks them, prompting the knight to shout for him to cover up. Spotting a cloak on the floor, he reaches for it, but the group quickly warns him. "That's high-level equipment," the knight protests. Ignoring the warning, the protagonist grabs the cloak and is nearly consumed by it. As the fabric wraps around him dangerously, he cries for help. The knight sighs, muttering, "I told you so." Eventually, they find some rags near a low-level skeleton for him to wear. Dressed in the tattered garments, the former demon lord feels a flicker of optimism. Life is beautiful, he muses, depending on how you look at it. It might surprise you. The group heads toward a magical crystal. Touching it, they're teleported to the kingdom where the heroes reside. Upon arrival, guards surround the protagonist, who continues his internal musings. Never miss a chance to test your strength, he thinks. You just have to be ready. Though, it's hard to prepare for something like this. The scene shifts. The protagonist sits bloodied in a chamber filled with chains, bored out of his mind. A man enters the room, promising pain and suffering. "I'll carve you into thin slices and hang you in the sun to dry," he sneers. The protagonist, unimpressed, urges him to get on with it. The torturer brandishes a bizarre instrument. "Do you know what this is for?" he asks. The protagonist chuckles, mocking the device as a sex toy. Angered, the torturer reveals another tool, claiming it will bring unimaginable pain. He asks why the boy isn't reacting. The former demon lord shrugs. "How am I supposed to feel pain when I'm paralyzed?" Momentarily flustered, the torturer admits he has a point but insists they're just getting started. As he rambles about his collection of instruments, he introduces his favorite, the Black Hand of the Sovereign, which supposedly simulates the deepest dungeons of the demon lord's realm. The protagonist smirks, challenging him. "What are you waiting for?" The torturer, taken aback by his boldness, pauses, a glint of admiration flickering in his eyes. "May I?" he asks, almost gleefully. The protagonist responds that not only can he, but he must. An old man with long white hair walks past a cell, where several prisoners plead for help and freedom. The old man merely tells them to be quiet. The old man thinks it has been a long time since he last descended into the dungeons, but he reassures himself that everything is fine, as he has recruited a new hero. He believes 5 hours with the most violent torturer should suffice and reflects that he never imagined another hero would be summoned in his lifetime. As he approaches a dark door, he feels uneasy about the situation. Hoping he hasn't arrived too late and that the one residing inside is still sane, the old man grips the doorknob and opens the door. Upon entering, he is met with an unimaginable scene. The protagonist and the torturer are lying on the ground, chatting. The red-haired torturer mentions he didn't know a scalpel could do so much, while the protagonist responds that it's better to cut slowly and in layers. However, the hero notes that this doesn't work well on old men, as despite their toughness, they are more likely to die. The pair turns their attention to the old man who has just entered. Still lying on the ground, they invite him to join them. Outraged, the old man slams the door shut in frustration. Leaning against the door, he questions what he just witnessed. He hears a noise behind him and, curious, turns to see the protagonist opening the door and asking if the old man came to see him. The protagonist assumes this was supposed to be his savior, and the white-haired man reluctantly confirms it. The hero muses that he's familiar with these recruitment methods. First, pain is inflicted, and then all sorts of benefits are offered. Afterward, the person will do anything to avoid the pain again and obey with gratitude. The scene shifts to the protagonist and the old man in a bathing area. The white-haired man apologizes for what happened, and the hero calmly accepts. The old man urges him to hurry up, as the king wants to see him. When the protagonist questions the king's interest, the old man explains that heroes don't appear often. He adds that he has no idea how the hero ended up in the torture chamber. The protagonist looks skeptical but says it's fine, remarking that he and the torturer had a friendly chat. The white-haired man tells him to take his time and informs him that the attendants will arrive shortly. Preparing for his bath, the hero silently curses the old man, suspecting he knows more than he lets on. As the hero relaxes in the warm bath, he reflects that humans are no different from demons by nature. Looking into the water, he sees his reflection from his past life, acknowledging that he's been both. Smiling, he decides the past no longer matters, the future does. He wonders what they want from him, whether they plan to use him as a puppet or treat him like other heroes. However, he realizes that first, he needs to figure out who he wants to become. The attendants arrive, cheerfully announcing they've come to serve the hero. Turning enthusiastically, he remarks that he remembers the recruitment plan well. After the stick comes the carrot. The attendants stand by the door, smiling, as he thinks to himself that he'll decide later who he wants to be. The attendants, carrying clothes for the hero, ask if he's ready for his treatments. Licking his lips, the protagonist thinks back to something he learned across 2 lifetimes, that women appreciate assertiveness. Striking a sensual pose, he adjusts his hair and declares he's ready for more than just treatments. The attendants, however, seem unimpressed. He approaches the blonde attendant, only to be scolded by the red-haired one. Complimenting the blonde's beautiful eyes, he tries to charm her. Embarrassed, she cuts him off, handing him a towel and stating that her only task is to dress him. Disheartened, the protagonist laments that merely dressing him doesn't meet his expectations. Before he can finish his thought, the attendants lead him back to the bath, leaving him thoroughly disappointed. The scene shifts to the king, holding a mysterious purple orb and scolding a man named Mantas. Revealed as the old man, Mantas nervously asks the king what he did wrong. The king angrily questions why the hero was released from the dungeon and threatens Mantas with time in the torture chamber. Terrified, the old man tries to explain but is interrupted by the king, who accuses him of not thinking clearly. Curious about the king's intentions, the old man asks for clarification. The king explains that he knows Mantas is old and does his best to maintain his position, but he shouldn't act like an amateur. He states that the hero should have been captured and executed. When Mantas questions the reasoning behind this, the king grows furious, calling him a fool and warning that if he asks such questions again, he will end up with the torturer. The king declares that no more than 5 heroes can exist simultaneously, something Mantas should know better than anyone. Mantas challenges this by questioning whether the old stories are reliable and whether the goddess is truly trying to protect them from a great danger. The king, however, firmly states that if the ancient tales are false, they could lose all future drafts because of the new arrival. Mantas points out that, regardless, the hero is already here, and the next summoning won't happen for decades. The king retorts that it isn't so simple. Even now, he doesn't know how to deploy his heroes effectively. They are relegated to chasing trivial threats like cultists and diseased outcasts near villages. Mantas concludes that the heroes are treated as resources and suggests giving the newcomer some time to become a loyal pawn. The king dismisses the new hero as weak, stating that the gap in experience between him and the others will likely lead to his death during the first wave of enemy forces, particularly if he is properly prepared. Ascending the stairs to his throne, the king announces that he will send the hero and the others into the heart of the conflict. He orders Mantas to summon the newcomer and inform him that a purpose has been found for him. Turning to Mantas, the king adds one final observation. He asks if Mantis doesn't find it odd that a sacred hero, chosen by the goddess, was summoned by cultists devoted to demons. When Mantis hesitates, the king grows exasperated, muttering that he's had enough of the old man. Meanwhile, the protagonist is in a dressing room being prepared by attendants. He sarcastically asks if this is how servants treat heroes. The red-haired attendant questions his remark, while another insists it is a show of honor and care. The redhead adds that it's clear he doesn't understand, having only just arrived. However, the hero remains unconvinced. The scene shifts to a violent battle, narrated as part of a historical account. It is revealed that the kingdom now enjoys peace, with demons largely out of sight. But this wasn't always the case. For centuries, demons spread terror across the continent, and the last war against the demon lord pushed all other races to the brink of annihilation. With little hope remaining, the goddess answered the prayers of her faithful and granted humanity the system and the ability to summon heroes. Thanks to these summoned heroes, humanity swiftly turned the tide of the war and defeated the demon lord. The protagonist reflects on how he had always wondered about the origins of these heroes. Unfamiliar with the system, he listens as a white-haired attendant explains that after the victory, the demon lord's remaining forces retreated to the dungeons, and demons have since avoided humans. This claim unsettles the hero, as he doubts the idea of demons being too afraid to show their faces. The white-haired attendant elaborates that since then, successive generations of heroes have safeguarded the kingdom, preventing demons from regaining their former power. She emphasizes that heroes are the kingdom's most prized assets and mentions someone named Algerdasic as the most important among them. As the attendants gush over Algerdasic, the hero grows visibly irritated. Internally, he scoffs, labeling Algerdasic a cold-blooded psychopath. The attendants then describe the other members of the hero squad. Elena, the dagger-wielding heroine, is dark and mysterious yet daring and feminine. She single-handedly slaughtered an entire bandit camp. The protagonist quips that her anger now makes sense. Rosalia, the mage, is described as cute and the group's mascot, though she is a powerful sorceress. The hero finds it odd to celebrate sending a child to war. Jonas, the axe-wielding hero, is a massive, silent figure shrouded in mystery. The protagonist vaguely recalls seeing him before. Egli, the priestess, acts as the group's older sister and spreads the word of the goddess. The hero considers her the most dangerous of all and mentally labels her a spoiled brat. Finally, the attendants turn their attention to the protagonist. Though he hasn't yet revealed his name, they are eager to see what he will become. Their enthusiasm only makes him feel uncomfortable, as he silently ponders his place in this world. The hero knows that being loved is terrifying, but on the other hand, whoever has the love of the people has power, and he loves power. With a serious expression, our hero demands to be taken to the king. As the protagonist strides confidently into the royal chamber, the servants whisper among themselves, wondering if anyone had told him that in this kingdom, heroes have no rights, serving the crown until death. One servant admits she didn't tell him and questions whether she should have. The hero is shown standing at the center of the majestic hall. A tense atmosphere builds as the king and the hero lock eyes. The hero reflects that he has never liked interviews. The king skips pleasantries and directly asks which world the hero hails from. Confidently, the hero drags a chair and sits cross-legged before the king, prompting a guard to wonder where the chair even came from. The hero speaks casually to the king, visibly irritating him. The hero claims to come from a land where even the air is a deadly poison, leaving the king questioning whether he is serious. He describes a place without trees, where people are forced to live among rocks, constantly threatened by orcs. Intrigued, the king asks the name of this merciless land. With a serious gaze, the hero replies that the place is called Norals. A scene then shows the grim inspiration for this description, a street in a lawless territory ruled by criminals. Startled, the king asks which demon lord rules over such a land. The hero pauses, considering the question, but decides not to answer. The king realizes this hero is more complex than he initially thought and declares that someone who has survived such a harsh world must have some utility. The hero is informed he will undergo the kingdom's veteran exercises, which will determine his class. The king, arms crossed, announces his first mission, though he already wishes it were his last. The king thinks to himself that no matter what hell this hero comes from, he will ensure the hero endures something far worse. The hero, on the other hand, senses the king's condescension and silently vows not to become anyone's pet hero. Thus begins a cold war of wits between them. Breaking the silence, the hero asks, "What are we waiting for?" Chapter 7. The hero recalls the Pareto principle, which states that 80% of outcomes arise from 20% of causes. As he strikes a straw dummy with a wooden sword, his strength, endurance, and agility stats increase by 1 point, and he gains the swordsmanship skill. Exhausted, the hero mutters that it seems unfair if 100% of outcomes could come from 0% of causes. Suddenly, a system error occurs, freezing all his skill progression. Across the training field, others grow weary of the hero's antics, especially after watching him strike the dummy for 5 hours straight. Despite this, a red-haired servant is impressed by his persistence. The hero, now on the brink of collapse, hears the system advising that insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results. Frustrated, he slices the straw dummy in half, startling the system. He stomps on the broken dummy and shouts at the system to try not leveling him up now. Despite his demand, another system error prevents further progression, leaving him stressed. Collapsing to the ground, he vents his frustration to the skies. Rising with an anguished expression, the hero catches the attention of a swordsman observing from a distance. While the swordsman seems unsurprised, his companion nervously wonders what the hero has against the dummy. The swordsman calmly remarks that the warm-up is over and it's time for the instructor to test him. The instructor approaches, unsure of the hero's potential. Introducing himself as the hero's first sparring partner, he is met with hostility. The instructor, still friendly, admits he has heard of the hero's harsh world and has no doubts about his abilities but wants to point out a few flaws before starting. He explains that while fervor and passion are admirable, composure is more valuable. He criticizes the hero's impractical posture, calling his sword grip unique but lacking refinement. Ultimately, he says, the hero lacks experience. Irritated, the hero challenges this claim, asserting that experience is all he has. With his sword ready, he advances on the instructor, thinking that hesitation in battle is nothing more than exaggerated chatter. As the instructor blocks his strike, the hero kicks sand into his eyes. Smiling, the hero says he understands and prepares a punch to the instructor's chest. The blow lands, forcing the opponent to his knees as the system reports more impossible increases. The hero questions the system while maintaining a threatening stance, his former sinister expression manifesting as an aura. With disdain, he declares, "To hell with the system." Our hero hadn't expected that knocking down an old, frail man would impress the others so much. The attention of all the other heroes shifts to him, except for Jonas, who remains focused on his training. Even the servants' opinions of the hero change, they now think he's incredible. Embarrassed by the praise, the hero wonders if they're serious since, to him, it felt no different than defeating a puppy. Despite the accolades, the hero knows he's much weaker than he used to be. Once a demon, he's now merely human and lacks humanity's key advantage. The system interrupts again, reporting yet more impossible increases, prompting the hero to angrily snap that he's already aware. He realizes this means he needs to choose a class that suits him. Standing before an array of weapons, he reflects that this won't be easy with such a buggy system. All eyes are on him as they wait to see his decision. The priestess asks if he has made up his mind, wondering if they'll end up with 2 swordsmen. The hero responds, probably not. He recalls his fight with the dummy, which showed he wouldn't last long in close combat without stat boosts. The priestess suggests he try magic, perhaps becoming a melee mage. The hero refuses, and the system reveals his mana level is abysmally low. The group begins brainstorming about which class the new hero should choose. Alina cuts them off, demanding they stop wasting the day, reminding everyone they have a mission to complete. The hero suddenly has an idea. Back when he was the Demon King, there was only one hero he respected, a man named Ge, the trickster. Ge survived every battle and outlived his comrades for 2 reasons. The scene shifts to the Demon King observing a battle between heroes and a giant orc. The orc mercilessly crushes the spear-wielding warrior, momentarily startling the Demon King. Amidst the chaos, he notices movement in the bushes. Investigating, he finds Ge lounging on a chair, eating a piece of meat. When questioned, Ge nonchalantly explains that he's on escort duty, finding the monster is his job, and the rest isn't his concern. The first reason for Ge's success is that he always knew what he was doing. He even invites the Demon King to sit with him as his team is decimated in the background. As the final moments of the battle approach, Ge appears among the corpses, pretending to fight valiantly. The second reason for his survival is that he was a master at faking it, playing the part of the desperate last man standing. While one demon wonders why Ge isn't dead yet, another remarks that this happens in every battle. Someone questions if Ge is such a skilled trickster that he can escape any danger. The truth, they say, is that no one pays attention to archers. The third reason is revealed: in this world of magic, colossal monsters, and powerful artifacts, archers are considered utterly useless. The scene shifts back to the protagonist choosing his weapon. The dagger-wielding heroine asks what his idea is. Unable to use magic and unsuited for close combat, the hero decides that survival is his top priority. He declares he will become the best of the useless archers. The other heroes seem puzzled by his choice, unsure if he's serious. The hero picks up a bow, strikes an imposing pose, and asks about the mission, ready to leave immediately. The scene cuts to Mantas, who appears uneasy while talking about goblins, muttering curses about them. As they walk, he tells the protagonist it has been a long time since they've dealt with goblins and that these damned creatures now have an entire city. Crossing his arms, the hero responds that he wouldn't care if they had 2 cities. He already expected to be tested but hadn't imagined it would be on something as trivial as goblins. To him, they're just savage idiots. As the heroes prepare to set off, the protagonist internally complains that they could at least have given him stronger enemies. Before the priestess can say something, Mantas cuts in, praising the hero's attitude. With a smile, he says there's no reason to fear the enemy. In his thoughts, the old man believes the king won't have to wait long for the newcomer to die. He also notes that the protagonist is the mission's key figure. All the heroes lower their heads as if they already know something, while our hero, surprised, asks if Mantas is really talking to him. Mantas, smiling even more, gives him a light pat on the shoulder and affirms that he is. Because, unlike the other heroes, you are absolutely, without a doubt, a nobody. You've done nothing noteworthy in this world. The hero feels belittled, but Mantas says that's precisely why he's so important to the mission. The old man bids farewell, and the hero asks what exactly he should do. Mantas, walking away, simply says he'll figure it out when the time comes. Egli, visibly uneasy, wonders aloud if the 6 heroes will be enough and fears the worst if something goes wrong. Mantas, turning with disdain, asks her if she doubts herself, remarking that such doubt is far from heroic. Some of the heroes climb into the carriage, urging the others to hurry so they won't waste time. Meanwhile, the priestess comments to the mage that everyone is being overly disrespectful to them. The hero thinks the others are complainers and feels glad that they'll soon be gone, only needing to deal with his strange level-up glitch. For now, he decides to do his best. The hero dozes off in the back of the carriage, his bow resting beside him. As they near the goblin city, the priestess remarks to the others that he's lucky not to be overwhelmed by this thing yet. She asks Jonas what he thinks, and he awkwardly replies that it's fine. The priestess then laments that she's tired of these tasks and questions why the heroes must do everything the king demands. Lena agrees, saying she's also tired of killing on command. The swordsman retorts, asking what she would do without this job. The dagger-wielding heroine replies that, obviously, she'd only kill whoever she wanted. Rosalia asks if she doesn't enjoy anything about their work, saying she's happy to spend time with the others. Eddie challenges the swordsman, pointing out that they're all eventually disposable. The mage innocently asks what they mean, while the priestess suggests they stop blindly obeying the king's orders. Their conversation is interrupted by the announcement that they've arrived at their destination. The priestess wakes the hero, who opens his eyes groggily and drooling. The heroes outside ask if he's ready, and he responds almost ready while still inside the carriage. One of the heroes asks the others what they think of the rookie. The swordsman says he's a weirdo, while Lena thinks he seems competent enough. The protagonist mocks the question as he dons his armor, confidently stating that he knows how to handle this perfectly. Placing his helmet on, he remarks that he learned from the best. The hero steps out of the carriage fully equipped, joking that all he needs now is to cover himself in guts to be ready for goblin hunting. But then he notices he can't see anything with the helmet on, so he angrily removes it, calling it a useless piece of junk, and throws it to the ground. As he turns to face the direction they're heading, he sees something unexpected. The large city of New Goblin Coblin comes into view, and the protagonist is left questioning where exactly he is. This isn't at all what he imagined. He observes a goblin banker and various goblin-run businesses advertised on billboards. The heroes walk through the city as goblins stare at them. Someone mentions the goblins' economic miracle. The priestess explains that the days of goblins being dumb monsters are long gone, as they've evolved significantly over the past 2 decades. The protagonist turns, stunned by what he's witnessing. He admits to himself that he was wrong to think goblins were only interested in stealing and mischief. Eddie comments that goblins have special glands that produce pheromones, which is why they become so prosperous. The hero, confused, asks how that works. The dagger-wielding heroine explains it's simple. Goblins learn to extract the pheromones from their glands and sell them as aphrodisiacs. The hero considers this a very clever idea on their part and concludes that it explains the goblins' economic success. He asks how goblins handle theft, and the swordsman responds by asking if anyone's seen the outrageous prices goblins charge for their products. The swordsman admits he was wrong to think goblins would never even learn to talk. The priestess adds that, beyond their newfound intelligence, goblins have also acquired culture. In the underground courtyard of Goblin Stair, a live music show was taking place. After asking if this was all they listened to, the protagonist was informed that goblins also enjoyed a genre called J-pop. While walking, the hero expressed confusion, saying that if the goblins had evolved so much and were no longer causing problems, there shouldn't be a reason for the king to be dissatisfied. The swordsman retorted that this was exactly the problem. The goblins were gaining more and more influence. They now had better armed forces and access to industries. When they used to steal and violate everything in sight, the population was perfectly fine with goblin genocide. But now? You can't even massacre them anymore. The protagonist admitted it made sense. The swordsman explained further, they've got so much money now, they don't even need to kidnap girls, they come willingly. The goblins seemed perfectly comfortable with their current situation. Continuing through the city, the swordsman said the goblins were trying to prove to the world that they were no longer stupid barbarians, and the heroes couldn't let that happen. The heroes were in the city as ambassadors, while the protagonist served as an agent. His mission was to meet the coordinators and bring down the regime as soon as possible. The protagonist, however, didn't feel very confident about the orders. He asked for more specifics as they approached the castle's main gate. The swordsman dismissed the question, saying there was no time for small talk. The dagger-wielding heroine sighed in relief, tired of waiting. Algertasic explained that they would attend a banquet in the enemy's stronghold and draw all the attention to themselves. Elena was ecstatic, eager to cause chaos. It was then revealed that the rest of the tasks would fall to the protagonist. Before he could protest, he was kicked by the swordsman, falling under the bridge into the castle's deepest section. The swordsman crouched and told him not to worry, the goblins would find him on their own. Covered in trash, the protagonist appeared deeply irritated by his situation. Looking around, he noticed a group of goblins gathered around a campfire. His attention was drawn to a banner featuring the face of a revolutionary goblin, seemingly the leader of the group. The protagonist was confused by what he was seeing. Nearby, a goblin child, accompanied by her father, looked at a poster of the same revolutionary face, which read, "Join Gobeln." The child asked her father who the man was and what they wanted. The father explained that they were the ones opposing the king, wanting everything to return to the way it was before. Curious, she asked what it used to be like. The father explained that goblins lived in caves and robbed anyone who crossed their path. Looking at a toy store, the child clutched her stuffed bear tightly and said that sounded awful. Gripping the banner and pulling it toward him, the father insisted it wasn't awful, it was a conservative movement. The protagonist was soon surrounded by goblins pointing their weapons at him, cornering him against a wall. He declared that although he only had one arrow, he wasn't afraid to use it, threatening the goblins in front of him. The goblins hesitated slightly, wondering where he had gotten the bow. A muscular goblin, who appeared to be the leader, approached and asked with a grin if this was one of the human agents supposed to help them. The protagonist internally sighed in relief, as for a moment he thought he'd have to kill all the goblins with just one arrow. The muscular goblin greeted him, explaining that their real leader was in prison. As the eldest at 15 years old, he had taken on the role of interim leader. The protagonist, in his mind, mocked this, thinking his dog had lived longer. Looking into a cabin, the goblin explained that the king had promised the heroes would help defeat the regime and bring them back to their origins. Crying, the interim leader lamented how the goblins had begun to forget what it meant to be goblins after all this time. The protagonist looked skeptical. The goblin pointed out a tunnel, explaining they would enter there and locate the chamber only to be interrupted by the protagonist, who told him to slow down. The goblin looked confused. A Machiavellian idea crossed the protagonist's mind. He asked what he would gain by agreeing to help the goblin leader. Hesitant, the goblin repeated the king's promise, only for the protagonist to cut him off again, pointing out that he didn't see any king around. Staring at the goblin with an intense, almost predatory look, he asked once more what he would get out of it, leaving the goblin at a loss. Money, the goblin offered. The hero scoffed at the suggestion, thinking to himself that he had never been one for freelance work. The interim leader suggests power, but the hero rejects it again, stating there's no point in having power over the savages the goblins will become under their new regime. Lifting a crate full of items, the goblin proposes that perhaps something inside might work, introducing an object called the goblin core. The hero picks up one of these cores, wondering what this junk is. Just as he contemplates selling it, a system notification appears, core successfully absorbed. Mana gained. Eyes widening in surprise, the hero's expression brightens with excitement. He eagerly asks how many of these cores the goblins have. The interim leader responds that they used to have many, but since the Goblin King took over, most have been locked away in his personal treasury. As the hero absorbs more cores, he declares it's time to destroy this bloody regime, rallying the goblins to raise their weapons and follow him. Through binoculars, the Goblin King's castle comes into view. The hero states the plan is simple and will satisfy everyone. Holding the binoculars, he tells the goblins to pay attention as he begins drawing in the dirt with a stick. The first group, composed of everyone except him and the interim leader, will attack the front of the castle to draw attention. A goblin, raising his hand timidly, asks if this isn't a suicide mission. The hero glares at him, asking if he has no love for his homeland. Continuing the plan, the hero explains that he and the interim leader will sneak in through the sewers to reach Gobelin and finish the job. The interim leader hesitates, mentioning that the sewer entrance is sealed, so how will they get in? Hands on his hips and head held high, the hero boasts that he's not just an archer but also a great mage and will find a way. Meanwhile, the system displays his current mana level, a mere 15 points. Another goblin suggests they wait for the guard shift in 5 hours to minimize losses. Before he can finish his thought, the hero pushes him off the ledge they were crouching on, sending him tumbling down. Attack now, the hero commands. Do you all understand? The goblins slide down the slope, ready for battle, while the hero and the interim leader calmly descend the stairs. A skirmish erupts at the castle's upper levels, drawing the guards' attention away from the intruders below. Reaching the sewer entrance, they find it barred shut. Grasping the iron bars, the goblin leader urges the hero to use his magic. Feigning confidence, the hero replies, "This is easy, I've got mana now." Internally, he ponders which ability to use, knowing he doesn't have enough mana for a full spell but can enchant a single arrow. He considers using a flaming arrow to melt the bars, creating a passage. Or perhaps he could transform the arrow into a golem arrow, which would smash through the barrier. As a last resort, he muses about enchanting it with a teleportation spell to bypass the entrance, though it would leave the goblin behind. While examining the system, he is notified that his level is too low for any of these options and asked if he wants to activate the only available skill. Frustrated, the hero reluctantly agrees. The arrow imbues itself with magical fire, and the hero remarks on how cool it looks. He releases the arrow, aiming for the bars. As it strikes, the arrow bounces harmlessly off the iron and lands on the ground, causing no apparent damage. However, the arrow begins to emit colorful, flashing lights. The system announces, "Skill activated, disco arrow." Useless but very pretty. The goblin, visibly disappointed, stares at the hero, who suggests they resort to the old-fashioned way. The hero tells the goblin to stop looking at him like that, claiming he was just testing something. Pulling a dagger from the back of his waist pouch, the hero wedges it into the cracks between the bricks. Inside the tunnel, guards notice a mysterious light outside and approach to investigate. As they open the gate and move toward the glowing arrow, they are ambushed by the hero, who lands surprise strikes on their heads. Retrieving the arrow from the ground, the hero lifts it triumphantly and proudly declares the name of his new skill for all to hear. Still holding the arrow, the hero lowers it and smugly tells the goblin leader that he said he'd figure it out. Meanwhile, commotion brews above in the castle. A goblin guard wonders what's happening this time, only to be reassured by his partner that it's probably nothing. Relieved, the first goblin mutters that he's glad he's only assigned to patrol the tunnels. Although boring, the second goblin concludes that it's at least safe. Suddenly, a menacing shadow looms behind them. It's the hero. He slams the first goblin's head against the wall and kicks the second one in the head, knocking them both unconscious. Before moving into a new hallway, the hero pauses outside with the goblin leader to check if the coast is clear. Seeing no immediate threat, they cautiously enter and proceed down the corridor. Along the way, they spot a goblin chained to the wall by his arms and legs. As they press forward, the hero wonders aloud what that guy's deal is. Soon, they come upon a room where the red-haired man from earlier stands alongside a goblin covered in scars and metal reinforcements. The redhead, grinning and wielding an oversized pair of pliers, gleefully remarks how much he loves part-time jobs. The goblin leader stops in front of a wooden door and tells the hero he believes this is where the true leader is being held. Meanwhile, guards stationed below hear the sounds of an attack upstairs. When informed of the assault, the guards protecting the leader are unfazed, noting that the attackers are nearly defeated. The goblin leader insists that they're already inside and just need to find the right room, but the hero tells him to shut up because he's thinking. Noticing the security room nearby, the hero declares he has an idea: they'll free all the prisoners to create chaos. The goblin leader agrees, though he notes this was the plan all along. Inside the security room, one goblin is reclining with his feet on the table, lazily picking his nose. He tells his standing companion that life hasn't taught him anything, to which the second goblin grumbles about only having one chair. He also mentions how the glass barrier was installed so they wouldn't accidentally release prisoners again. The reclining goblin dismisses his partner's concerns, claiming no one would believe a magic accident excuse twice. Just as he starts dozing off, the two heroes watch from a distance. While the seated goblin drifts into sleep, the standing one focuses intently on the monitoring panels. Weapons drawn, the heroes creep closer. Just before they attack, the standing goblin turns and notices them. A fight breaks out, waking the reclining goblin, who springs into action. The hero elbows the standing guard in the face, sending him staggering into the lever that controls the cell locks. The goblin, realizing what he's done, accidentally breaks the glass protecting the lever and activates it. Panic sets in as the cells begin to unlock, freeing the prisoners. Chaos erupts as the newly freed captives clash with the guards. The heroes watch the goblin guard lament his mistake while the other remains ready to fight. The protagonist tosses both guards through the window into the melee below. The hero then asks about Gobolny's location. Amid the chaos, a heavily scarred goblin with a stern expression walks through the fray. With an air of mystery, he takes down a guard with a single punch and knocks out another with an uppercut. The scarred goblin approaches a door, grabs the handle, and steps inside. Moments later, he emerges bloodied but triumphant, holding a beret. Placing it on his head, he smiles with satisfaction and proclaims, "I love the smell of rebellion in the morning." Gobolny finally comes face to face with the hero and the goblin leader. Sneering, Gobolny remarks, "So they sent me a worm instead of a hero." The hero retorts, "If it weren't for me, you'd be stuck eating soup for 3 more years. Gobolny smirks and tells him to relax, admitting he's just teasing and that he actually wanted to end up in prison. The rebel leader then strides toward a massive guard stationed at a door, exuding confidence. With a menacing glare, Gobolny steps forward, causing the guard to falter and allow him passage. His eyes scan the wall as he presses against the bricks methodically. With a satisfying click, a hidden door creaks open. Gobolny turns to the hero and says, "This is the only path that leads directly to that wretched king." The protagonist grins maliciously, thinking about the orbs he plans to claim. Meanwhile, curious goblins notice a crack forming in one of their walls. One goblin panics and runs, while others point their weapons toward the secret door. On the other side, the protagonist stands in the opening, staring down the goblins. The scene shifts to the Goblin King, lounging on his ornate throne, surrounded by lavishly dressed guests. A goblin bursts into the throne room, breathless, and whispers into the king's ear about the breach. Rising to his feet, the king raises his arms, commanding silence. In another chamber, the hero's allies are feasting at a banquet. Noticing the king's movement, the sword-wielding hero among them warns his companions. The guards are on high alert. The goblins summon the heroes, but one of them, still chewing, refuses, grumbling that the meal isn't over. Annoyed, the goblin guards draw their weapons, demanding compliance. The rogue heroine, with a sly grin, pulls a hidden dagger from her cloak. "Looks like you didn't get the message," she quips before striking down a guard. "We're not finished eating." Chaos erupts as the heroes clash with the goblin guards. The priestess supports her comrades with protective magic while the swordsman cleaves through enemies effortlessly. The guards stand no chance against the heroes' combined might. One goblin sneaks up on the mage, Elena, but she swiftly neutralizes him with a blast of arcane energy. Suddenly, a broccoli head is hurled at Elena, bouncing off her head. The swordsman calls out, "Reinforcements are coming." Elena, furious, gathers a massive fireball and unleashes it on the advancing goblins, incinerating them. The room is littered with bodies, and the mage sneers. "I hate broccoli," she mutters. With the battle seemingly over, the group realizes their novice ally, the protagonist, might be in danger. They burst into a room only to find the protagonist reclining among a pile of defeated goblins, casually waving. "Thanks for worrying, but I've got it under control," he says smugly. Nearby, Gobolny violently tears a guard in half, his expression one of grim determination. Extending a bloodied hand to the heroes, he thanks them for helping shape a brighter future for his people. "The humans won't regret siding with us," he says confidently. But their moment of camaraderie is interrupted by a massive rumble. 2 towering goblins clad in metal armor storm in, trampling everything in their path. One of them knocks Gobeli aside as they charge toward the group. The protagonist, still lounging, sighs. Of course, the unforeseen happens right when I thought we were safe. Rolling to his feet, he barely dodges an attack and grabs his bow. At least they're not as pathetic as the others, he mutters. The battle resumes, with the heroes skillfully coordinating their attacks. The protagonist, however, takes a different approach. Trusting his instincts, he scales the walls, leaping gracefully from ledge to ledge. Reaching the high ground, he readies his bow. Taking aim, he fires a well-placed arrow into the head of one armored goblin. Combat and parkour, he muses, a perfect combination. As the heroes dominate the fight, they notice a blood-stained door slightly ajar. Inside, Gobeli stands over the Goblin King, who is pinned to the ground, his face pressed against the floor. Gobeli declares, "Your tyranny ends here." The heroes, goblin allies, and royal guards gather in the hall as Gobeli addresses them. "Enough of this pointless fighting," he shouts. "Can't you see we're destroying ourselves pretending to be something we're not?" He condemns the king for reducing their once feared kind to beggars who sell their dignity for luxury. The goblin allies cheer, while even some royal guards hesitate, nodding at his words. Slamming the king's head into the floor, Gobeli snarls, "If we continue down this path, we're doomed to extinction." Rising to his feet, he commands, "Brothers, rise. Let us reclaim our heritage and burn the mistakes of the past." As an explosion erupts in the distance, Gobeli raises his arms. "From the ashes of this tyrant's wealth, we will build the true goblin kingdom." As Gobeli concludes his triumphant speech, an arrow pierces through his chest, silencing the crowd. The impact makes him stagger, and all eyes in the hall turn toward the attacker, the protagonist, standing with his bow drawn, fury in his eyes. "What kind of nonsense was that?" he shouts, firing another arrow. Gobeli tries to rise but is struck down again by another precise shot. Arrows keep landing on him, pinning him to the ground until he collapses, defeated. The hero walks up to him, standing over his motionless body. Some goblins in the room watch the scene in shock and horror, while others gaze with curiosity. Trembling with rage, the protagonist exclaims, "You should never have touched my orbs." Flames continue to spread around the room, devouring what remains of the king's throne and wealth. Amidst the fire and chaos, the revolutionary leader lies defeated, his followers now unsure of their fate. The goblins, bereft of leadership or purpose, revert to their primitive ways, fighting among themselves to establish a new leader. With the kingdom in turmoil, the heroes quickly retreat from the battlefield. Jonas hoists the protagonist onto his back, carrying him as the group makes their escape. As chaos engulfs the goblin city, the heroes board their wagon and hastily leave the scene. Reflecting on their mission's outcome, they note that they technically dethroned the king. Yet, confusion lingers among them as they steal glances at the protagonist, searching for an explanation. Feigning composure, the hero bids a nonchalant farewell to the goblins, watching their city collapse into anarchy. After several days of travel, the group finally returns home. The townspeople greet them with cheers, celebrating yet another victory over evil. Mantis stands at the gates, waiting for their arrival. Surprised that everyone survived, he informs them that the king is already expecting their audience. Despite their exhaustion, the heroes reluctantly make their way to the royal hall. In the throne room, the king receives the group with a mix of disappointment and curiosity. "So, the rookie survived," he remarks dryly. Yawning, the protagonist retorts, "Of course, I survived. What did you expect?" The king demands to know if the Goblin Kingdom was liberated. The group hesitates, exchanging nervous glances, as the protagonist stammers his way through an explanation. Finally, with a deep breath, he confesses that there is no more kingdom. The king, bewildered, presses for clarification. The hero bluntly explains that the city is in ruins. Enraged yet resigned, the king inquires if Gobeli managed to deliver the monster cores as promised. Suspiciously, the protagonist wonders how the king knows about the cores. Speaking aloud, he admits that Gobeli did not deliver them because they exploded. The king, exasperated, reveals that the fake cores were a decoy to avoid suspicion and that the real ones were hidden behind the throne. A memory suddenly flashes in the hero's mind, him throwing a torch behind the throne. He awkwardly admits, I might have accidentally burned them." The king's face twists with fury as he demands, "Did you destroy everything?" The protagonist sheepishly replies, "Not exactly. 6 of them were absorbed by me." A system notification confirms the absorption, much to the group's disbelief. Fuming, the king declares that he's already decided what to do with the hero. He announces the hero's execution, leaving the group in stunned silence. Days later, the hero finds himself imprisoned, awaiting his fate. Sitting in his cell, he mutters, "This sucks. I've been through this before." Memories of his past life surface, where he escaped a similar situation by clinging to the ceiling and ambushing his captors. Determined to replicate his success, he attempts the same trick. However, a hooded figure enters his cell before he can act. Leaping down to strike, he is swiftly overpowered. Pinned to the ground, he realizes it's a woman. Grabbing her collar, he shoves her away with brute force. Poised to deliver a finishing blow, he freezes upon recognizing Rosalia. Embarrassed, he stammers, backing away. "What are you doing here?" he asks. Rosalia, brushing herself off, replies, "I'm here to get you out." Ecstatic, the hero assumes she's turned against the king and asks if they're all going rogue as mercenaries. Blushing, Rosalia corrects him, explaining that she negotiated a deal with the king. The hero's relief turns to confusion as he blurts out, "Wait, what kind of deal?" Smiling faintly, she responds, "The kind that saves your life." Looking from side to side, the hero asked why Rosalia would do this. Blushing, she replied that it was because she loved him. The hero stared at her, not quite processing what he had just heard. Blushing even more, Rosalia confessed that she had realized it from the very beginning. As a flashback shows an embarrassing moment between the hero and the mage, the protagonist awkwardly thanks her. A montage of moments between them plays, highlighting the times Rosalia stood by his side. When he asked her for a favor, her gaze already held a hint of admiration. While the group argued, the hero was the only one who remained unbothered. And it was during the broccoli moment that she knew her feelings were real. Breaking the mood, the hero clearly showed he wasn't ready to reciprocate her feelings. In an emotional outburst, Rosalia asked if he would date her. In a panic, the hero replied that legally speaking, it would be simpler for him to just stay imprisoned. He thought about trying to remember all the puzzles he'd solved during his previous incarcerations as he closed the cell door on himself. Furious and radiating magical energy, Rosalia demanded to know if he had been toying with her feelings all this time. Trying to stay calm, the hero said she had misunderstood, as everything happened too suddenly. She paused her attack, quietly accepting his words. She murmured that maybe it was because she looked like a girl that no one took her seriously. But in truth, she didn't age and was over 20 years old. The hero thought to himself that he wasn't going to fall for that line a second time and asked why she dressed like a child if being mistaken for one annoyed her. Rosalia explained that it was because her master loved her that way. The hero, now curious about her master, thought he should learn more about Rosalia's story. It was clear to him that she had serious trauma connected to her mentor. Seeing her sadness, the hero felt a twinge of guilt and decided to comfort her. "So, what are we doing today, now that I'm not getting executed?" he asked. Rosalia, still downcast, didn't seem enthusiastic about answering. The story flashes back to the day of the hero's condemnation. Mantas had been lecturing him about how deeply he had messed up. His actions were a direct violation of royal orders, a failure of the mission, and a grave risk to the entire kingdom. As the hero tuned out Mantas's scolding, his mind wandered to the storage room full of advancement orbs. While plotting his next move, he was startled when Mantas, now right behind him with a terrifying expression, shouted, asking if he was even listening. Wiping the spit off his face, the hero watched as Mantas walked away, muttering, "Whatever." Mantas then announced that, due to the king's boundless mercy, the hero's compassion, and a little blackmail, the hero would be given another chance. "You're lucky," Mantas added, "because these are uncertain times for the kingdom." He explained that a mysterious illness was corrupting the minds of farmers and laborers, something ominously called the Union of Labor. But as if that weren't bad enough, an entire region near the kingdom had been overtaken. Burning everything wasn't an option this time, and diplomatic relations with the elves had also grown tense. They needed to re-establish peaceful contact with the elves. As Mantas spoke, the hero drifted into a daydream full of lewd thoughts, snapping back only when Mantas mentioned the real threat: the demon lord had returned. Shocked, the hero listened as Mantas explained that no one else knew yet, but the demons were already on the move. Oddly satisfied, the hero thought, finally, it worked. He knew exactly what to do: first, retrieve the cores. Then, flee the kingdom, head to the demon realm, and be warmly welcomed by its inhabitants who missed him. After consuming all the cores, he would overthrow the false king and claim the throne that was rightfully his. Mantas interrupted his fantasy, warning that if the hero tried to escape or failed his next mission, the heroes would track him down and end him. The hero, realizing he wasn't strong enough to face them all yet, resigned himself to lowering his pride. Perhaps, befriending him might work? Mantas instructed the hero to be ready by 6 p.m. the next day. But when the time came, the hero was surprised to find no one around. Looking to the skies, he wondered aloud, "Where is everyone? Who are you talking to?" Mantas snapped, breaking his thoughts. The hero remembered his list of tasks: deal with the elves, the rebellion, and something about demons. Mantas sighed and asked, "Are you an idiot? After what you did with the goblins, no one trusts you with any mission until you fix your own mess." The hero moves to a different setting, sitting at a table with a wooden desk in front of him. He's in a classroom, where the teacher announces the start of the lesson. Before beginning, the teacher introduces the hero to the class. Pulling out some papers, the teacher asks what they see in the image: a drawing of a demon. The hero casually responds, "A cute chicken." Holding the paper, the teacher asks what the image makes him feel. "It's a drawing of people holding hands." The hero answers, "Happiness," which pleases the teacher because it's correct. The hero is then deemed ready for group lessons. The teacher instructs the class to control their emotions and trust their partners. With a cheerful smile, the teacher tells them to let their partners lift them like a princess. The hero looks up and sees his assigned partner, a large, muscular man. Horrified, he tries to flee but is caught. As the hero is lifted, the teacher instructs everyone to manage their anger by breathing in and out. Confused and irritated, the hero wonders what on earth this has to do with anger management. Frustrated, he shoves the man's face, earning disapproving looks from the others. The man, clearly displeased, calmly says the hero is wrong to act that way and that his therapist knows best. He then shows the hero a pendant, proudly explaining he earned it after 2 years of not losing his temper. Intrigued, the hero asks if he really managed 2 whole years without getting angry and challenges him to prove it. The man agrees and asks, "Want to play Jenga?" Jenga, a game requiring patience and precision, becomes their battleground. The hero promises to take the pendant if the man loses his composure. Confident, the man accepts. As they play, the rules are simple: they take turns removing blocks, and whoever topples the tower loses. The hero starts scheming, thinking the man is too calm. The man questions if the hero will resort to insults, but the hero denies it, saying he'll do something worse: distractions. Surprised, the man listens as the hero begins describing things designed to irritate: driving behind slow elderly drivers, crooked picture frames, poorly placed wallpaper, and spoons sinking into soup. As the game progresses, the hero removes a piece smoothly, while the man starts sweating and trembling. The hero smugly asks if he's having fun. Losing his composure, the man slams a block on the table, threatening to make the hero regret his actions. The hero, maintaining his cool, points out the man's inability to control his anger, declaring himself the winner. The teacher steps in, acknowledging that while the hero was right, the man showed admirable restraint but still had much to learn. As the lesson concludes, the hero sneaks away, reflecting that while he won the battle, he lost the war. Exhausted, he remains in the classroom until the teacher dismisses everyone, leaving them with the bizarre parting advice: "Remember, if you're hot-headed, you'll automatically be sexually attracted to your parents." The hero leaves the classroom drained. Wandering aimlessly, he encounters the dagger-wielding heroine. Striking up a conversation, she asks if he's tired. He replies, "Obviously." She then offers to help him relax, and he agrees. The heroine leads him to a certain place where a crowd of people has gathered. She asks why he's hesitating, and he says it reminds him of his old world. When she inquires if he misses it, he replies indifferently, thinking it's hard to miss something he never truly valued. Nothing tied him to earth, not even his wife. In fact, anything but her. She was a horrible person. People were right to think their marriage was purely transactional. Her father had heavily invested in his business just to secure a future for his daughter. At first, her father spoiled her, only to suffer the consequences of her entitled behavior. She initially tried to manipulate the hero into loving her, but when that failed, their relationship devolved into one where they slept in separate rooms. He occasionally gave her money while ignoring her and whoever she was with. As for friends, he admits he didn't have any real ones since returning from military service. Most he knew were either drunkards or dead. He laments failing to make new friends, a shortcoming he now feels deeply. Somehow, the hero managed to get back on his feet after the military. It wasn't easy, but he pulled through by working various jobs. Even then, he couldn't find one he truly liked. However, shortly before his death, he managed to find something to support him, and for the third time, things seem to be going well. As he walks past a group of drunkards, the hero mutters that those days are behind him now. He wonders why he was the only one among his friends who didn't lose the will to live and questions whether this is the true nature of humanity. Our hero drinks with the dagger-wielding heroine, remarking that he might have always wanted to be a poet. Staring into his cup, he muses that it would have been better than running around chasing goblins with a bow. When he glances to his side, he realizes he's sitting alone. Scanning the room, he spots the heroine at another table, playing cards. Feeling betrayed, he finds it ridiculous and yells, "Alina!" She doesn't respond, but some women nearby turn to look at him. One of them leans toward the heroine and says something about applying powder to her sick nose. The hero, however, gets up and walks over to the women on his own. Standing in front of a blonde woman, he can't help but notice her ample cleavage. She asks if he minds if she joins him, and he responds that he doesn't. The women exchange glances, silently celebrating their success. 30 minutes later, the hero is still venting, and the blonde is visibly fed up. The hero rambles on about the empire's economic well-being while the woman turns her head away, completely uninterested. She signals to a brunette to take over. Meanwhile, the hero climbs onto the table as the women chat among themselves. The blonde asks how much the heroine has lost so far, and the brunette replies, "Quite a lot. A bit more, and she'll be in debt again." The blonde suggests switching out, remarking that she's never seen anyone as nerdy as the hero. Unbeknownst to them, the hero is eavesdropping on their conversation. He storms over to their table and yells at the women to leave, accusing them of cheating the heroine. The scam was blatant, but the heroine hadn't noticed. Placing his hands on her shoulders, he urges her to leave. The heroine refuses, claiming she's in control. But at that very moment, it's revealed she's lost everything and starts begging the hero for money. The women, flaunting their looks, distract the hero, coaxing him away while the heroine stays and continues to lose. In the midst of kisses and embraces, the hero snaps out of it and rushes back to the table. The women try to hold him back, but the hero declares he'll have to do this the hard way. He approaches the table, only to be struck on the head by a bouncer. The hero wakes up to see people wearing animal masks looking down at him. They mutter that they thought their luck was bad today, but it turns out they're in for a treat. Chained up, the hero hears the chicken remark that he's an underdog and that they'd been wondering about his power for a while, only to discover it's nothing special. The hero's vision is completely distorted from the alcohol, making him see each masked individual as a real animal. The chicken announces that they'll deal with him first, then take care of the rest of the heroes. Soon, the crown will belong to them. The owl pulls out a razor, asking what they're waiting for as he approaches the hero. The chicken taunts him, asking if he wants to know where his girlfriend is. The hero is baffled by their assumption that Alina is his girlfriend. Outside, Alina debates what to do. On one hand, the hero helped her, but on the other, she never asked for it. Frustrated with the situation, she plucks a flower from the ground and starts playing He Loves Me Not to decide whether to save him. Drawing her dagger from its sheath, she contemplates her next move. Meanwhile, the hero sarcastically tells the masked group to hit harder or speak louder. They demand to know where Alina is, threatening to find her along with the other heroes and take control of the city. With his distorted vision, the hero mockingly asks why they don't just ensure their plan succeeds quickly and who they even are. The chicken declares that they're the ones dissatisfied with the current state of affairs. Soon, they'll overthrow the tyrant they serve, and the empire will be free. The hero inquires if they're talking about the king and cheekily asks if there's a spot for him on their team. The donkey-masked man questions if the hero is delirious, while the owl says he's no longer of any use. Holding a syringe filled with an unknown substance, the chicken warns that this is the hero's last chance to reveal Alina's whereabouts. Bloodied and battered, the hero smirks and responds, "She's right behind you." Alina emerges from stealth mode, dagger in hand, and asks the hero why he gave her away. While the others looked back, the hero grabbed the owlman's arm with his feet and broke the chains, engaging in hand-to-hand combat. He stabbed the man wearing the rat mask and punched the chicken-faced guy, while the heroine with the daggers fought the donkey-headed one. With the chicken-faced man being the last one standing, he begged the hero in front of him for mercy. The hero, emanating a fearsome aura, ripped off his head. He was then dragged out by Alina. She asked him what had just happened, and the hero explained that he had been knocked out, captured, and tortured, and then she had helped him. They turned to look at the mess they left behind. The hero said, "That's what happened." She replied, "I didn't ask them to meddle in my personal matters." The boss of the place scolded the women, warning them that another mistake like that and he'd send them to the fisherman. As he turned around, he saw the two heroes back in the establishment, causing the bald man to flee in a panic. The hero turned to the women and said, "If I were you, I'd look for another job, this is your chance to change." Then they left the place. Back in his quarters, the hero woke up after a good night's sleep and was greeted by Mantas, who informed him that the king wanted to see him. When he arrived at the palace, the king mentioned that he had heard about what the hero and Alina had done in the city center the day before. The hero replied that it was nothing serious, and they had already handled it. But the king said he didn't think so. The kingdom's situation had changed significantly after the hero's intervention. The people were now organizing large protests, demanding rights and rallying for causes. And that's where our video ends. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel. See you next time.